All right.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we have on Taing from 2C Capital on the show. Aang is an experienced private fund manager with over $100 million in assets under management. Previously, he spent 12 years in private market and real estate investing as an economist by trade at the Wharton Business School, but he also has experience leading data science teams at companies like Apple, Capital One, and AT&T. Aang has a super interesting classical immigrant story that can only happen in America, and I would not do it justice if I tried to tell it here. So we're going to get into that, but I'll stop there and just say, Aang, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we like to start with the difficult questions here. What's your favorite ice cream?
My favorite ice cream is coconut.
Okay. What do you like about coconut? I have this theory out there that people either love coconut or they hate coconut. There's no, it's a very polarizing
It is. It
taste.
is. It is. I guess when I eat coconut ice cream, usually there's like real coconut in there. So sometimes I like that flavor and the texture.
Yeah.
It just reminds me like I could probably eat a frozen coconut. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's probably good enough for me too.
That's awesome. Any toppings on it or just straight up coconut?
Straight up coconut.
There you go. There you go. Classical man. So tell our listeners, what's the scoop? What do you do today?
What do I need to say? I have two young kids, two young boys, one almost 3 and one 6 months. And I run Tozy Capital. We have north of 150 million of real estate. Literally, right before this call, I just got a call that we got under contract on 164 unit multifamily in Atlanta.
Awesome.
Talk about that. And I also run Bitcoin mining fund farms that we were about to start hashing, and then it's a lot of pots in the iron, and as well as really excited about our 9 portfolio community that we're building out in senior living. So all of it seems like disparate and potentially like just a lot, but I've always managed a lot. And I've also always liked to tie them into themes of cash flow and tax advantage. That's generally what I go for. I'm pretty, if you drill into my investment philosophy and thesis, it's a pretty traditional thing. I like to have asymmetric benefits through illiquid assets and have good cash flow and good tax advantages so that it's just innately good. So that's how I've grown up and built my company, built my wealth.
Yeah, I want to talk about crypto after this call, just because that's a space where I know enough about it to sound really, really smart to my mom, but really stupid to someone like you. So I kind of want to get your perspective on that and what you're doing there. Normally we go into like where your real estate journey began, but I want to actually hear, I want you to tell your story about your history. So I don't want to put any containers around it or any walls around it. So I'll just turn the floor over to you because I think your story is super impactful and super inspiring for a lot of folks. So could you give us a little history of your background?
Happy to. And it's something that I think is very important to understand why I do what I do now and why I hustle and grind so much. I grew up, a little bit, it's a little bit of my parents' story versus my story, but I'm happy to communicate that. My parents are Cambodian. They grew up and lived during the Khmer Rouge when around the late 70s, the average life expectancy in Cambodia was 18 years old. That signifies that there was a significant genocide, which my parents were the targeted audience of Chinese Cambodians, a minor ethnic group in Cambodia. I remember stories of, and it reminds me of all these World War II stories of the Jewish experience in Europe, and very sad stories of my dad would have hideouts and you would hear soldiers come middle of the night and just take people and never see families again. And so he would like jump from house to house and then send my mom through the jungle with my older brother, who's 2 years older than me. And he was born there in Cambodia. I was born in a refugee camp in Thailand. after my parents traversed through the Cambodian jungles and made it to safety in a camp, where I also heard stories of how they were hiding from the soldiers because they were there illegally and they would get kicked out if not. Um, and my dad always tells me he would have been a big person if that didn't happen. And I believe it. He's a hustler. He's an entrepreneur. Um, and they both never went to high school or elementary school, so it's atypical potentially of a Asian immigrant experience that you might hear of, where you have highly educated Asian folks who come to America and focus on education. I think that's part of my story, focusing on education, focusing on security, focusing on having financial security in a world where you had very fleeting moments of insecurity, where I remember chasing chickens in a refugee camp, and and now I have I just built a second playground on my very nice house in San Diego, and I think like, man, these kids are spoiled. But what can you do? Um, it, but it helps tell the story of both a forgotten and tragic experience. That was sort of the aftermath of the Vietnam War, and there's a significant portion of Vietnamese and Chinese, not Chinese, Cambodian refugees that came to America that were just very poor. They had no education, and that was my parents. We got settled in LA. They use different dates for the birthdays. I'm not sure, who knows when we were born. This sort of just all a mixed bag of just trying to survive. And I grew up in LA, in East LA, and I grew up in poverty. I grew up I didn't have a room to myself until after college. Even in college, I was actually still bunkmates. But even after, when I came home, I would always just share a bed. I would share a bed with my brother. But that was very formative. That was formative because it gave me a sense of what I could survive off. I could survive off very little, and also gave me a sense of what I needed to survive. Um, and for me, I'm lucky. I'm lucky the fact that I grew up in that experience. I'm lucky in the fact that that made me a stronger person. I don't look at this as, oh, woe is me, this is terrible. I look at this like, hey, I'm grateful for the food stamps. I'm grateful for welfare. I'm grateful for pulling myself out of welfare, having 4 jobs. I'm grateful that my mom has neck and shoulder pains carrying buckets of water, um, and I'm grateful that we survived. And I use that gratitude a lot in my application of math and data science in everything I pursue. So I'm going roundabout way of just highlighting that I survived a lot, but it also gave me a sense of purpose, of true purpose, of feeling that whatever life was, you just had to be grateful, and you just had to have a very big sense of purpose of, this is why I'm doing it. And I was never really clear of exactly why. I was never like the person who would pinpoint, I'm going to be a real estate investor, I'm going to do this. This sort of just came to me. But I was always clear that I had to be flexible and adaptable. When you're moving around so much, which I did at my childhood, when you're changing positions and changing things a lot, and you just have stability. It- Instability is my constant. Change is my constant. Adaptation is my constant. I survived through many financial crises. I was day trading, and in high school when we didn't have internet access easily. And I've been good at math, so I've been grateful for that, and grateful to get into Wharton, and grateful for going to investment banking, and grateful that I got washed out of investment banking because of the financial crisis, and went to Peace Corps, where I met my wife, who was volunteering abroad, and we were at our poorest we were ever been, and meet, and then have a family after that. So it's a I should write a book about eventually, but it's a very interesting story that I'm leaving a lot of holes in, but it also is a story where interspersed through all that, I felt the need for security. And when you're in a space of insecurity, you it's never a good place to be, I don't think. I think when you have so many needs and so many, wants because you don't have it fulfilled, you make not the best decisions. You don't make long-term decisions, you make short-term decisions. um, and you think limitly, you don't think abundantly. And one of the things that I've evolved for me has been this abundance mindset of just thinking that I can do more, I can be more. And that's highlighted the fact that I've went to many different fields, many different positions, and I've succeeded in almost every one of them. Um, and I'll keep doing that with the confidence I have. And I hope this story helps people understand that you don't need a lot and you should always think of what you have versus what you don't have. Because I don't know if this story could exist for somebody who grew up in the suburbs. That I don't think this story could exist for
Yeah.
my son. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what would happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's super impactful story. I think 2020 taught us a lot about pain and disruption in our life. Not nowhere even close to that. I know we were chatting on before we got on here that my spectrum changing moment was when I went to Africa and I climbed Kilimanjaro, and there were people wearing cardboard on their feet making $2 to do the trip up and back. And it makes you really be grateful for what you have. And that's what I would encourage people coming out of 2020 to think about, is like, it disrupted your world. You can either use pain as a demotivator or as pain as a lens to be adaptable, to be flexible, and to think about the next path that you have forward. I don't want to breeze over the point, though, that you left Wharton to go into investment banking, to then go into the Peace Corps making $200 an hour in a war-torn country. I have to ask, like, what was your mindset thinking about there when you're coming from, I'm assuming, a high six-figure job, feeling like you had quote unquote made it from, where your parents had come from to where you were at that point, to giving it all up to go pursue this? What was inside of you that made you want to do that?
It was $200 a month,
Yeah.
and you don't get housing. Like you have to use that for housing as well. So it was like really $100 a month. You have to, and I remember going to these bazaars, these markets, and haggling over a clove of garlic and one egg because like you want to buy for what you want to eat. And I was at my best fit. I miss those days of my fitness level. A lot of my friends and colleagues during that time went to MBA. That was sort of the refuge from the financial crisis. I was considering that, but I really wanted to experience and resonate and empathize with my parents more. And uh, I always loved volunteering. During Katrina, I volunteered during spring break. I could have partied with like, other friends, but I'm a person who likes to donate the time and money and resources and be generous. Um, that's finally who I am, and I do that now with helping people, and hopefully I can help your audience, whoever, getting into real estate or doing whatever. Right, I am passionate about it, and if somebody's passionate about something, I love to help them. Um, it was the hardest conversation with my parents of trying like, hey, I'm gonna go do this thing that it's gonna pay me $200 a month just to survive, and I'm gonna go to this war-torn country that you suffered and survived and got your children out of, and they're like, what? I don't understand this concept of you wanting to go back. Like, you know how terrible that was. Um, but I thought it gave me perspective. I always like traveling. I love traveling to this day. In 2020 it sucked because I don't get to travel. But being a traveler and a visitor is different than being steeped in a culture. And I really wanted to experience that. So for anybody who even thinking about Peace Corps, either do it early in your career or do it late. I think that's probably the best times. And there's lots of many volunteers that were like 60 plus and they just retired. Great group of guys and folks. What was going through my mind was I just wanted to give back, and I found an opportunity in the time and space to do so, to help another war-torn country, Georgia. I volunteered in the Republic of Georgia in right after the Russian invasion. A very familiar story. And they annexed Abkhazia, a region that's now basically it's a conflict region, and there was lots of refugees. Um, and there's lots of live animation there's lots of no-go zones. And we met at the time Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. We had a escape plan. We had to go these routes, and it was all very exciting, also very like
Dangerous.
dangerous. Yeah. I guess I I gravitate towards experiences.
Yeah.
Because I think it helps formulate people and give them understanding. Um, uh, I think all of it's relatable. All of it's understandable. Like I learned another language in 10 weeks. I was forced to because my host family and the village I was in, no one spoke English. And if I wanted to survive, I just need to learn
How to
and that's
communicate.
yeah,
Be
communicate.
adaptable.
Exactly. And I guess the biggest thing I want to tell your audience is like, be adaptable, guys. Always be a learner. That's going to be the best thing that ever happened. My last job at Apple, I was leading data science for Siri. And data science in Siri is very important. And I learned programming code and how to be data science in the first 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was leading the teams there. And before that, I was a product manager. Before that, I was, in business management. Um, I think being adaptable just gives you understanding that you can adapt in anything and you can learn anything. And those learning mechanisms help you do almost anything in life. So this. Yeah.
So I'm assuming your parents weren't rah excited that you were going to leave investment banking to go do this. It's a very contrarian point of view. And in fact, you proved later in your career when you left Apple, which I'm assuming leading Siri and being on that team as they developed that product set and becoming the platform that it is today, is very contrarian as well to leave to go to real estate. There's some folks out there that are probably in one of two situations. They're either thinking about things differently in 2020 and saying, is this the path I want to go on? They're looking to make that move into something different. Or they're thinking, hey, I'm tired of trying to keep up with the Joneses and I need to move into having my basic needs set up for me and making sure those are taken care of. And I know that investing in real estate is a great place to do, but it's contrarian to the people that they're around every single day. What kind of guidance could you give those people right now that maybe they're having that conversation that you had with your parents about going to Georgia on a much lesser scale, to be clear. But it is contrarian to what the path that they're on or the people that they're around today.
I think you're almost always influenced by people you're surrounded with. When I was in Silicon Valley at Apple, working in the big spaceship campus, we always talk about the latest features and releases. And in Silicon Valley, we always talk about the latest apps and IPOs and startups, right? This is just what, we were always on the newest app. If we were on Lyft and Uber right before everybody knew about it, we were on all these apps before they became mainstream. And that was interesting, but that was very monoculture as well. One thing that gave me sort of a sense of understanding of the value of real estate was I was always investing in real estate. I bought my first property before I went to Peace Corps, and I managed it from the Peace Corps. And I bought another property when I came back from Peace Corps. How did I have money from it? Because I did a value add, and I did kind of remotely, and I did well enough, and the market was good. Bought it after the financial crisis. But I say that point because I always had the side hustle of real estate. I used my W-2 income to always just accelerate that, to leverage into that. And I fundamentally believe that having a passive stream of income gave me more boldness, more abundance mindset to, even if having $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, gives you sort of a sense that you can say no, you can say yes to things that you might be scared of, say no to things that you don't feel like you have to do out of sense of the need to do it. And just having a base layer of support allows you to make bolder decisions. And that's how I finally believe, like I got into the highest level IC positions and manager positions, and I was always one of the youngest people at every row I was at. And a lot of that I can read a whole book about this, like, on like how to change jobs and how to navigate corporate culture. But you don't make those decisions if you are living in fear of the next paycheck, of grinding out, keeping it with the Joneses. Because you do have a passive stream of income, because you have real estate as a side hustle, potentially as a main passion, but you're trying to build up to it, to then retire. I retired from Apple because I made more money passively from my income, real estate, than I made from Apple, which was very significant.
Yeah.
It really helps to give you a different mindset. And I'll leave it as a note. Like, I talked to a lot of my colleagues at Apple who, granted, are very smart people. They're high up level and they make a lot of money, but that's all they have.
Mhm.
And they're always grinding on it. And because they're so busy and they have so much responsibility and they have families now, they just don't have time and mindset to consider making your capital work for you. And so they have the house, they have the stock, the RSUs, and that's it. And they don't really have the plan B. They just like, I'll just wait until 401k vest and retire.
Yep.
It's a long time ago.
Is that what helped you feel like you could make the contrarian move of going from investment banking to Georgia as well? Because at a certain point, you were fleeing a genocide, you landed in a poverty neighborhood of East LA and made it to Wharton School of Business, a phenomenal business school, and now you're trading on Wall Street. Like, your basic needs, as you were talking about earlier, your basic needs had already been met: food, shelter, and clothing. So did you feel like because those basic needs were met, you could go do time giving back and not have to worry about, is this going to damage my career and all these other kind of things?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I never judge anybody who's not generous if they don't have the basic needs met. You can never judge anyone's situation. Maybe they're mad or upset at that moment because they just have a lot of terrible things going on. Um, and really, if you can just alleviate a lot of your concerns, your basic needs, and understand that you don't need that much. You don't need that much to survive, guys. It's lots of people live with less and they're happy. I think, we can say folks aren't happy, but like, I think if you have family, if you have, your health, that's really a lot that matters.
Yeah. I I've been dying to have this interview since I started the podcast then, because that's it right there. The intentional living of knowing that your passive income covers your basic needs frees up so much more mental space, whether you go volunteer in the Peace Corps, whether you leave a lucrative job, whether you just show up more intentionally for your kid's softball game. Whatever it is, I believe that even having something as small as $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month of investing in a real estate deal or a syndication or something like that will free up mental clarity that you don't even know is blocked right now. So I'm so glad you're on the show, because that's the story I'm trying to tell, and you just told it. So thank you for that. I want to switch gears though, and talk about the way you look at data. So as I've gotten to know you and have some conversations with you, I mean, you are using all of those skill sets around being good at math, seeing patterns, being an investment banker, working with Siri, which is a big data platform, and you're seeing trillions of pieces of information to come up with some kind of end game. How do you use those skills today to help underwrite data, or underwrite your deals, or go find what markets you want to play in today?
Yeah, and before I jump in that, I just want to highlight one thing you said, and I love what you said about this passive income stream. I moved away from day trading and moved away from these volatility assets and having to stress about up and down what the market is doing today. And I gravitated towards conservative cash flow. I invest for cash flow, and I love that feeling of just peace, calm, passivity. Like, it's just like here every month. And there'll be some things that happen here and there, but it's very predictable and I love it. And so with predictability of real estate, it can be very predictable because it's macroeconomic trends that you have to decide on. The biggest variables that you generally want to look for in investing in a market is population growth, job growth, and crime decreasing. Those are publicly available data, and I created models using city data and Department of Jobs and other big publicly available data. Ultimately, that allowed me to create a lot of models that eliminated a lot of cities that I wouldn't invest in. That's not to say that you can't make money in these cities. Ultimately, having these rule of thumbs that are driven by math and driven by numbers and data gives you a competitive advantage above a lot of people. Um, Doing a bad deal in a good market can often save the deal. But doing a good deal in a bad market might not save the deal.
That's right.
You can't fight macroeconomic population depopulation. It depends on your horizon. But what I've also learned is that in real estate, it's almost always about who you know and when you buy it for and the deal you get. So it's a little bit contrarian where you have to use math and strong underwriting, and I use a lot of scripts, mostly to evaluate what the norms and averages are to be faster in my underwriting. Because sometimes just being fast in the deal, I evaluate probably north of 100 deals a month, and we're scraping broker data. some of these sites lock me out sometimes, but I write code to just break into sites and grab them, public, and then have a program that just scans some of the market level data that they provide, because they're on top of things as well. And then just make underwriting faster, because sometimes you have to be fast and you have to go at scale, to narrow down from 10,000 potential acquisitions to 100, and then to do deep dive into those 100 and make offers on 10. And I like to consider them lowball offers, hopefully, and get an offer hopefully on one, which is a big filing effect. But it helps with scale too. Like, being able to scale has been one of the biggest benefits of leaving Apple and going to what I do now at Tozy Capital. Having, scaling helps in almost every sense. Buying multifamily, threeplex and fourplex, you put the same amount of time and effort into one of those and buying a 150 unit property. So and then your variable cost goes down, your standard deviation of outcomes go down. In a duplex, it's very binary. You have 50% occupancy, 100% occupancy, or 0% occupancy. But with 150 units, it's very predictable. And I love predictability. I can model that out. And with population growth, there are certain p-values that allow you to understand how rent will look like. But then there's also markets that also don't play in these norms, like San Francisco, right? Rent to value ratios are mostly dictated by how much people have in rent, what Apple stock is, what Google stock is. Yep. And those people can buy a lot and they sink their assets into properties that don't cash flow because they just want to diversify. They just have a lot of money. But when you buy in Midwest, where I buy, and Southeast, Southeast America, in Atlanta, for example, you don't face the same competition. And so it's always about it's about filtering, but then it's also about, these filters are good, but they'll tell you that Austin's a great market. It's also a very competitive market, and I still want to make money. And I still want to get cash flow. So you still have to value that value proposition and price to rent ratio in your perspective as well.
Yeah, there's two things I want to pull out from what you just said there. One is you talked about three things: population growth, right? Everybody seems to know about population go where the people are going. Job growth, everybody seems to know about that, right? Go where the jobs are going, and make sure that it's diversified job growth, right? You don't want to just go where one industry is. But I've heard you talk more about crime than I think anybody else as well. Like, you want to make sure that the crime statistics, they don't have to be perfect, but at least they're trending in the right area. And my second point that I really kind of wanted to get into was that every syndicator or everybody that gets involved in real estate has their competitive advantage. We've talked to some folks that only invest in certain markets. We've talked to some folks that only do vertically integrated, meaning they buy the asset, they have a contracting team on their payroll, they have a property management on their payroll. I think your super skill and superpower is the fact that you can go run these scripts to scrape the entire web of free information out there to find what is the areas that we want to play. And going back to, I think the theme of this episode so far is knowing what to say no to is just as important as knowing what to say yes to. And that's super key. So we might have you back on the show to get super nerdy, because I know I've got some tech folks that listen to this show that would
Love
be
it.
really interested in Python scripts and all that kind of stuff.
Love it.
But you brought it up a couple times before we leave on to our 5 toppings around that I want to get into, is that you recently got under contract in a property in East Atlanta. Tell us about the property and tell us a little bit about the deal.
It's literally hot off the press. I'm about to go to meeting with my team to talk about timelines. But it's 164 unit, multifamily value add, very classical value add. It's around $300 below rent, and it's $300 below rent because half of the units are renovated. And it's very classical of value add multifamily. You prove that you can create value through some parts of it, and then you leave some part of it not created value, and you cycle through it because you don't want to saturate the market. With time, we can then renovate them. And so we're doing a classic, changing out the old flooring. It's 1969 product, and we change into vinyl flooring, and we change new shaker cabinets, and we put new coated paint. Very light touch stuff, but it will increase rents by $300 and prove it out with local comps that are essentially not 100% occupied. And by doing that, and what I love about multifamily and commercial real estate, and I classify multifamily commercial real estate, is the level of control you have on the valuation of the asset. When you sell your house, you or a triplex or duplex, it almost doesn't matter what rent you're getting. It matters what your neighbors sold their house for on a sales comparable. And if and that makes it that single family houses are more like stocks. There's a lot more liquidity potentially. It goes up and down more, but you have very little control. Versus multifamily, where especially large scale multifamily, where they trade for a certain cap rate, and they trade, and if you can affect the cap rate by increasing the NOI, by increasing top line revenue, decreasing the cost, you can force appreciation. This is sort of like what I did with our value add rehabs, but at a larger scale and very formulaic. So it's going to be north of a 20% IRR return. It's been hard to find value add multifamily. It's been hard to find multifamily in general. I believe it is an oversaturated asset class. So you need to have really strong connections in these markets. But I have another 192 units in Atlanta as well. So I'm glad to continue to expand that market. It's a lot of job growth in that market.
Yeah, a 20% IRR is really unheard of right now. So I can't wait to see that deal. And I know one of the first times we connected, we talked about this deal and that you were working on it, and you might be able to get it and all this kind of stuff. And that basically the premise was that the contractor went in and renovated half the units to show that if you renovated the units, you could get the extra rent. And now they're going to leave some of that meat on the bone for you to go execute that strategy. So I'm super interested in seeing that deal when it comes out. And we're going to shift gears now into our last final questions here. We call these the 5 toppings. The first question is, what is your favorite book, or what is a book that you've read recently that's given you good insight?
I think The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang, who advocates for UBI, and what do you think of UBI or not? You should be thinking of it as passive income, like the fact that it alleviates a lot of scarcity mindset and creating abundance mindset. I love the fact that abundance mindset at any level of financial economic condition gives you more hope, and hope and gratitude is really going to drive you to wherever you need to be.
Yeah, I want to go into that so deep right now, but I'm going to avoid it because when I heard him on a podcast explain, we got 20 million truckers out there or whatever the number is, maybe it's 2 million, but a certain percentage of those with autonomous vehicles are going to have to switch job functions. And it's not as easy as go learn computer programming in 5 weeks and work at Apple kind of thing. I mean, it is a big monumental shift. So I don't know. It's some interesting arguments. And I think that if you completely are against UBI, you should read it to confirm your thoughts. And if you have no idea what we're talking about with UBI, you should read it to see what your thoughts are. And if you're for it, you should read it to maybe even strengthen your thoughts. But I always believe if you're against something, you should still learn about it because chances are, at the very least, it'll just strengthen your point of view.
I love that I am able to give my investors $1,000 a month.
Yep.
Yeah, someone investing like $100,000. Oftentimes our returns are 12%, and so we give them and we pay monthly. So I start thinking like I'm giving them a UBI even though they're investing. So obviously it's their money, their returns, but it gives them a sense of like, feel like security.
Yep. The second question is, I believe the person that you become in 10 years is directly correlated to the habits that you do every single day. What's something that you do every day?
I I fast every day. I do intermittent fasting. I think it keeps me hungry and lean in the morning. And I think there's so many health benefits of fasting. Uh, I don't have enough time to exercise, but I know diet is one of the biggest drivers of how you are.
Yeah, another topic I want to nerd out about because most people know I'm like an Ironman triathlete, and I'm dabbling in the fasting, and worlds of difference if you don't eat late at night and you don't eat in the morning, how your mind just starts shifting and gets into a flow state better. The third question is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice I ever see is be flexible. Because I think when you're so driven, you gotta go for excellence in one thing. But when you get knocked down and you don't achieve it, it can ruin you, it can wreck you. And if you can like combine two great things and not 100%, but 90%, you're at like 100% of a specific combination. Being flexible gives you the nimbleness to survive anything that goes for it, economic, financial, asset class, whatever.
Love it. Love it. What is the thing that you're most proud of in your life?
I'm most proud of helping my family achieve their own financial freedom, of buying my parents a house, by having a big why of getting them out of poverty. It was such a singular purpose, but also a very flexible purpose. Like it gave me a lot of purpose to achieve that for them. And it's always been my family and how I can help them. And it's why I also think of my investments sort of as a family business. Like I invest in all of these investments myself, and I think of my investors as family, and I want them to have the same success and achievements.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at a loss for words just thinking about how much of a sense of pride that must feel like to come from where your parents came from and to be able to give them a house and some sort of stability and things like that. That's just incredible. The last one is, if you could sit down and eat a bowl of ice cream with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I think it's a very interesting question. I think I've been very much recently in this Stoic philosophy lately, and so Marcus Aurelius would be a very interesting person if I could speak Latin. Just understanding the gravitas of weight and responsibility, and shouldering and bearing it very well and gracefully. I think that's just a fascinating topic to me.
Yeah, Meditations is on my reading list, and I'm surprised I haven't read it yet. I start reading it and then I get distracted with other things in my life, but Meditations is definitely on my list. Do you follow Ryan Holiday at all?
No, but I will.
Yeah, he's kind of made his money in apparel, and like super young, wrote a couple books on ego is the enemy and different Stoic philosophies, and he puts out some good content as well. Kind of the modern day Marcus Aurelius without being an emperor of Rome. Hang, super impactful conversation. I'm going to definitely bring you back on because I want to nerd out on some of your Python scripts and just different ways that you scrape data and
Love it.
write code around that. But if our listeners wanted to find out and more about you or reach out to you, where's the best place we could point them?
Uh, Go to my website, sign up. There's open deals right now. Reach out to me via email. Hopefully, it's all in show notes. Eng at Tozi Capital, Touzi capital.com, or tozicapital.com. Once you sign up on the website, I have usually once a month or maybe twice a month education webinars. I just love educating people, and I find that I learn so much by learning something yesterday and teaching them it today. Um, I, I I started this whole thing because I realized I could like save so much taxes on using real estate. I pay 0% in federal taxes now, and I love just talking about it because I remember paying so much taxes when I was at Apple. And so like just like my passion for what I know and what is helpful for people, it drives me. And if you can get on my newsletter, hopefully you get the same experience and exposure.
Yeah, you're going to become my new best friend because taxes are my devil right now. So I'm super interested in hearing how I can lower that. But thanks, Ang. Super impactful story, but also really insightful tips on like how you underwrite data and figuring out which markets you want to play in. And I can't wait to have you back on the show soon.
It was great talking to you, Matt.